Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to explore the core components of AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM, Users, Groups, and Policies. These components are essential for managing access to your AWS resources securely and efficiently. By the end of this session, you'll understand what IAM Users, Groups, and Policies are, how they work together, and why they're so important. Let's dive in. Let's start with IAM Users. An IAM user is an entity that represents a person or application that interacts with AWS resources. Each user has a unique name and credentials, such as a password or access keys, to authenticate themselves. Here's why IAM users are important. Individual access. IAM users allow you to grant individual access to AWS resources, ensuring that each person or application has the permissions they need. Security. By creating separate users for each individual or application, you can enforce security best practices like the principle of least privilege. Auditability. Each IAM user has a unique identity, making it easy to track who performs specific actions in your AWS environment. For example, if you're managing a development team, you might create an IAM user for each developer and grant them access to specific EC2 instances and S3 buckets. Next, let's talk about IAM groups. An IAM group is a collection of IAM users that share the same permissions. Instead of assigning permissions to each user individually, you can assign permissions to a group, and all users in the group will inherit those permissions. Here's why IAM groups are important. Simplified management. Groups make it easier to manage permissions for multiple users. Instead of updating permissions for each user, you can update the group's permissions, and all users in the group will automatically inherit the changes. Consistency. Groups ensure that all users have consistent permissions, reducing the risk of errors or security gaps. Scalability. As your team grows, you can add new users to existing groups, ensuring that they have the appropriate permissions without needing to configure them individually. For example, if you're managing a team of developers, you might create a group called Developers and assign permissions to access specific EC2 instances and S3 buckets. Any new developer added to the group will automatically inherit these permissions. Now, let's explore IAM policies. An IAM policy is a JSON document that defines permissions, specifying what actions are allowed or denied on which resources. Policies can be attached to users, groups, or roles to control access to AWS resources. Here's why IAM policies are important. Granular control. Policies allow you to define fine-grained permissions, ensuring that users and applications have the minimum permissions necessary to perform their tasks. Flexibility. Policies can be customized to meet your specific security and compliance requirements. Reusability. Policies can be attached to multiple users, groups, or roles, making it easy to reuse permissions across your AWS environment. For example, if you're managing a production database, you might create a policy that allows read-only access to the database and attach it to a group of analysts. Now that we understand what IAM users, groups, and policies are, let's explore how they work together. Here's the process. Create users. Create IAM users for each individual or application that needs access to AWS resources. Create groups. Organize users into groups based on their roles or responsibilities. Define policies. Create policies that specify the permissions for each group or user. Attach policies. Attach policies to groups or users to grant the necessary permissions. For example, if you're managing a development environment, you might create a group called Developers, define a policy that grants access to specific EC2 instances and S3 buckets, and attach the policy to the group. Any user added to the Developers group will automatically inherit these permissions. Here's a quick recap of what we have learned so far. Users, individual identities needing access. Groups, collections of users for simplified permission management. Policies, the rules that define allowed or denied actions. By combining users, groups, and policies, you can create a robust and secure access control system for your AWS environment. This granular control is what makes IAM so powerful. Remember, the principle of least privilege is key. Always grant only the necessary permissions to users and applications. That's an overview of IAM users, groups, and policies. In the next module, we'll dive into how to create and manage these components in the AWS Management Console. See you there.